Good morning students. Today we are going to learn the subject Science and Technology part 1st for standard 10. So students, we are learning the lesson first, gravitation. In that last time we have seen gravitation and force and motion. So students, today we are going to learn circular motion and centripetal force. So here is one experiment done. In that, let us see what is there. Tie a stone to one end of a string. Take the other end in your hand and rotate the string so that the stones moves along a circle as shown in figure 1.2a. So 1.2a is a figure this, and we are moving the stone. Are you applying any force on that stone? In which direction is this force acting? How will you stop this force from acting? What will be the effect on the stone? So these are the questions arising in your mind. So let us see. As long as we are holding the string, we are pulling the stone towards us, that is towards the center of the circle, and are applying a force towards it. The force stop acting if we release the string. The force stop acting if we release the string. In this case, the stone will fly off along a straight line, which is the tangent to the circle, at the position of the stone when the string is released, because that is the direction of its velocity at that instance of time, as shown in figure 1.2a. B. You may recall that we have performed a similar activity previously, in which a 5 rupees coin kept on a rotating circular disc flies off the disc along the tangent of the disc. Thus, a force acts on any object moving along a circle and it is directed towards the center of the circle. This is called the centripetal force. Centripetal means center seeking. That is, the object tries to go towards the center of the circle because of this force. So see here one experiment we are performing here, in which we are holding one end and tying a stone to the other end and moving it in a circular direction. Okay, so here the force acting towards the center of the circle, and if you release it in between, then it moves to the tangent. And mean, you know that in circle, tangent means which touching at one point, so it moves in the tangent direction where it releases. Okay, as shown in the figure 1.2b. See here. So the force acting towards the center of the circle, that is called centripetal force, or centripetal means center seeking. It is always acting towards the center. There is one experiment also we had done last year. 5 rupees coin we are keeping on a circular disc, and we are moving the circular disc in moving it. Then what happened? The coin moves in tangential direction. You know that the moon, which is the natural satellite of the earth, goes round it in a definite orbit. The direction of motion of the moon as varies during this motion. Do you think some force is constantly acting on the moon? What must be the direction of this force? How would its motion have been if no such force acted on it? Do the other planets in the solar system revolve around the sun in a similar fashion? Is similar force acting on them? What must be its direction? So from the above activity, example and questions, it is clear that for the moon to go around the earth, there must be a force which is exerted on the moon, and this force must be exerted by the earth, which attracts the moon towards itself. Similarly, the sun must be attracting the planets, including the earth, towards itself. So here given the explanation and the practical example of moon and the planets of the solar system. So there is no string between the earth and moon, but there is one force acting between earth and moon. That's why moon is rotating circular around the circle around the earth. Also, the planets like earth, Saturn, they are moving circular path around the sun. There also one force acting there. Kepler's laws which are used. So planetary motion had been observed by astronomers since ancient times. Before Galileo, all observation of planets' positions were made with naked eyes. By the 16th century, a lot of data were available about planetary positions and motion. Johannes Kepler studied this data. He noticed that the motion of planets follows certain laws. He stated 3 laws describing planetary motion. These are known as Kepler's law, which are given below. So in when there were no telescopes like such today we have, that time the planetary motion is just made observation by naked eyes. But in 16th century, the scientist Johannes Kepler studied all the data and he noticed that there are planets following certain laws. Okay, so this we are going to see the Kepler's law. Now here is one information given. So about ellipse. An ellipse is the curve obtained when a cone is cut by an inclined plane. It has 2 focal points. So here this is a cone, like a joker cap, right? Ice cream cone like this. If you cut it with the inclined plane, we get this shape. Here shown small, but if you enlarge it, we'll get like this shape. Okay. So if you take any 2 points anywhere from this middle, see, so 2 focal points from every point on the curve is constant. F1 and F2 are 2 focal points of the ellipse shown in the figure. If AB and C are the 3 points on the ellipse, then so F1 and F2 are the focal points, okay, of the ellipse. Now if you take A, B, C, any random points, not here only, if you take here or somewhere also, then AF1 plus AF2 is equal to BF1 plus BF2 is equal to CF1 plus CF2. This is a property of ellipse. So here Kepler's first law. What is it? The orbit of a planet is an ellipse with the sun at one of the foci. So here the orbit of planet is not circular, it is elliptical in shape, like egg shape. Okay, this is elliptical shape, not perfectly circular, and sun is at one of the foci or focal point of the ellipse, okay, that orbit. Okay, so this is our Kepler's first law. So figure 1.4 shows the elliptical orbit of the planet revolving around the sun. The position of sun is indicated by S. So this is the position of sun, and this planet is moving. This planet A is moving all this across the elliptical path. So see, now the next, Kepler's second law. What it says, the line joining the planet and the sun sweeps equal areas in equal intervals of time. So line joining the planet and the sun sweeps equal area in equal intervals of time. So this is the interval of time. This is some interval of time. This is also some interval of time. This is also some interval of time. If you see this area in first figure, this is equal to this area included by this shape, and this area, all three areas are equal, but the time interval should be equal. Whatever time we take, should this time and this time will be equal. This is the Kepler's second law. AB and CD are the distances covered by the planet in equal time. Is AB and CD the distance covered by planet in equal time. After equal intervals of time, the position of the planet starting from A and C are shown by B and D respectively. Starting point is A, end point is B, starting point is C, and end point is D in the same timing. The straight lines AS and CS sweeps equal area in equal interval of time, that is area ASB and CSD are equal. So area ASB and area CSD, these two areas are equal. This shaded area is equal. Okay, this is the Kepler's second law. Now we will see the Kepler's third law. So let us see the Kepler's third law. The square of its period of revolution around the sun is directly proportional to the cube of the mean distance of a planet from the sun. Thus, if r is the average distance of planet from the sun and t is its period of revolution, then t square is directly proportional to r cube. That is, t square upon r cube is equal to constant is equal to k. So Kepler obtained these laws simply from the study of the positions of planet obtained by regular observations. He had no explanation as to why planets obey these laws. We will see below how these laws helped Newton in the formulation of his theory of gravitation. So here it is given square of its period of revolution. So here this is our planet and this is the sun. So it is moving around the sun. From A position it will start and again it will come to the A position. Whatever time is required for it, it is called period. So for Earth is 1 year. Okay, so the t square is directly proportional to the r cube, that is the mean distance from the planet. Now see here, planet is very near to the sun and here is very far from the sun. So we'll take the averages of all the distances, that is called mean. We take mean of all distances and we take that value, that is a mean distance from the sun of a planet, and if you do their cube, so we can find that t square is directly proportional to r cube. There is a relation, t square is equal to r cube and is equal to constant. It always remain constant everywhere for every planet. Now these are only theoretical laws, but there is no explanation about why this is happening. So there is formulation of theory of gravitation done by Newton, as we learn in first part. Okay, in the Newton's introduction he gives the practical solution for the Kepler's law. Okay, these are the three laws. Okay.